Okay, lead. Okay, what about thallium? Where does thallium come from?
Water sources are a big source of cess. Secondhand cigarette smoke was a big source. So again, it can be passed on in utero.
Okay.
But water sources are a big source.
You told me once that it was green juice.
Yeah, it's true. Because when they looked at lettuce and they were using certain pesticides, certain fertilizers,
Okay.
they were really high in thallium, and then that was going in. So when you juice something, you concentrate it.
Okay.
And people drinking juice, green juice, with spinach, and there were some other ones that I don't even recall at the time, super high levels.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to check in. I don't know, Andy or producers, if you can hear, our chat disappeared. I want to make sure that we're still live. And our B-roll looks black. So I want to make sure that we're still going before I make you talk more. Technical difficulties, please stand by. I think we could still be live, so let me just text Andy and make sure that... Oh, there's the chat. The chat's back.
Cool.
Strontium. Stacy wants to know about strontium.
Strontium 2000. Yeah, no, look, some of these radioactive elements are now coming, there's theories that it's coming from, what happened in Japan.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's true or not. I know that we have higher levels in fish in certain places.
Fish?
Yes. So of radioactive elements. So it could be.
Okay. What about aluminum?
Aluminum you get from certain medications, high aluminum.
Like what?
Antacids.
No way.
Big, huge source. Deodorant is another hidden source because you absorb it into your skin. Mm-hmm. And aluminum can be in certain foods. Cooking with tin foil now, it's been a big thing out there.
So that's a no-no.
That's a no-no, especially heated or acid foods.
What about, that made me think about some of those pans. I mean, we could bring up some healthy pans on Amazon if we could find some, but
yeah.
What do you think about some of these like silicone baking sheets, and what do you think about that?
The silicone's better than some of the other non-stick.
Oh, really? Even
things.
heating
Yeah,
it?
so silicone's better. That's not the average plastic, or there's a certain type of plastic they use for spatulas and those things, but the silicone ones are better.
Okay, and what other heavy metals am I not thinking of that are important to talk about? Well, we know gadolinium could be. Let's talk about gadolinium.
Yeah,
you're kind of an expert
again,
on that
testing people that get MRIs with certain contrast can have gadolinium.
And so that's a particularly heartbreaking situation because a lot of people who have pre-existing mercury, which can mimic some of these neurodegenerative diseases like MS, right? Those are people who are candidates for a gadolinium IV, contrast IV, because they're looking to see why are they having this neurological, hyperreflexia, tremor, right? And so then they...
Yes.
Can you go for it?
Yeah, well, what people are going to be told is, oh, it just flushes out of you, and it's fine.
They say in 2 months, right? It's supposed to leave your body.
Gone. Yeah, I would say, yeah, in a perfect world, that might be true. But if you already have detox pathways, we have a plane going over, so yeah. I think they can hear us. But if they already have detox pathways that are slowed down, being affected by other stressors, as we discussed, they can bioaccumulate that. And we see tests and people are like, that was years ago.
Yeah,
and
that they had that contrast.
Yeah.
So, and just to recap, like gadolinium is a really toxic heavy metal. If you have kidney issues that your doctor is aware of, you're not allowed to get it because if it doesn't clear quickly, it causes damage.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that are not supposed to get contrast IVs, but if you're considered healthy, you'll still be. And again, I know it's tricky because sometimes they need it. They need to see what they need to see.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not telling anyone not to get it because to your point, it might be a life-saving thing where they have to see that contrast, right? So, we're not advising. We're just saying there is another side to it that people have to consider.
Yeah, and so, if it hangs out in the body, it can cause toxicity. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, I don't want to go too hard on this, but chelation, because a lot of people are always like, what is chelation, Dr. Kate? Why do I need to chelate? Does everyone need to chelate? What if I feel okay and then I chelate and I feel worse? And I don't want you to go too hard on this. I know there's a lot to say, but just...
I don't. You had said it earlier on, and I so wanted to jump in because
we'll do it now.
Because here's why: people go, "Oh, I chelated," and that means they got an IV chelation from their doctor. There is a lot of dangers there. It almost sent me into the hospital. Why? Chelators real chelators have an ability to pull a lot at once.
Okay.
And they exit very quickly, but they go away very quickly. And then what happens is you get a redistribution. And that's what happened to me.
Okay.
So I became very passionate about, you know, and I watched, you know, many people get very sick from IV chelation. Is there a time and a place? There is.
Yeah.
In an acute situation, it can save your life.
Okay.
Right? So again, not recommending, but in a chronic situation, it doesn't work because it pulls, it goes away, and then the body keeps releasing, and then you end up with a redistribution of the heavy metal. So you have to be very, very careful with that.
So to simplify what you're saying, you could have heavy metals kind of in the gut or in inert areas, or when I say inert, like they're not in the brain.
Right.
They're not in the areas that can really...
Other tissues.
And then this chelator goes around like a magnet, it can grab on to metals. Can you explain what that
Yeah, a chelator
biochemically?
has, without getting into the science, it binds.
I love it.
Yeah, they don't, trust me, but it's called a thiol group or a thiol group.
Okay.
You know, and it utilizes like a crab claw, and it grabs on.
Okay.
And it does it in a way where it's very strong bind, and then it leaves the body with it. So it grabs on and leaves the body. Now, there's weak chelators, and you and I have brainstormed around this for a lot, because a lot of people don't know it.
Yeah.
So you're one of the very few doctors who actually know it.
Yeah, thank
but
you.
There's weak chelators, things like cilantro, right? I mean, you know, chlorella. I mean, do they serve a purpose? They do. So it's not like I'm always against them, but for people that have heavy metal issues for real, they're not good at all, because they bind very weakly, and then it lets go and it redistributes.
And this is like something that happened to me on my health journey. I was learning about all these healthy things and trying everything because I had no idea what was wrong with me, but I was really sick. And I remember I got into hot water with glutathione because it was sort of right in the time when glutathione was making it a big, like it was a trending topic in natural medicine. And it seemed like it was this end all be all like miracle. And so I just went really hard injecting glutathione. I mean, a lot, like high amounts.
I did the same thing.
And it made me so sick.
Me too.
And everyone that I asked, like all my mentors in functional medicine, who were people who know everything, but they just don't understand mercury. And so, or toxicity, you could say, toxicokinetics, you could say, which is fine. Like that's a niche thing. Although I think you're going to see more emerging experts on this topic because of need, right? Because it's we're starting to realize that we're right. And then it goes into genetics and DNA mutation. But where was I? So most people who are healthy, when they take glutathione, it makes them feel better.
Yeah.
It helps. But people
It's true. For me, I had the same experience you did.
Yeah.
I remember where I was. I was picking up my car at a dealership. I think I had new tires on. Can you believe I remember that? That was probably like in the year of 2000. Wow. And anyways, and I thought I had to run out of there because I was just flipping out. I mean, it was like an hour ago I had glutathione and I thought I felt better, and then all of a sudden this anxiety was coming over me and it was horrible, and then it just kept going downhill. So you're right, it's not good for everybody.
Do you want to explain why that happens in someone with toxicity?
Yeah, because glutathione, it's more of a weak chelator, right? It can pull, but the problem is it's not strong enough to hold on to it as it goes all the way out of the body. No, that's the problem.
And I think you said something about alpha-lipoic acid once, which I kind of now want to apply to glutathione. These molecules that have many functions, they can get distracted too. So it's like what you were saying about ALA in the brain. It can chelate, but then it gets distracted by all of its other things. And glutathione's not that different, right?
Right. Yeah, it's not, because glutathione has so many functions in the body as an antioxidant, right? I mean, it protects the DNA, it protects the cell. So it can very much get distracted, right? And alpha-lipoic acid we utilize as a brain chelator that moves inorganic mercury out of the brain. It's a very important part of that protocol. However, it doesn't do a great job of moving it all the way out of the body. So I was trying to do, because at one point I couldn't utilize certain other chelators very much, and I was trying to do ALA by itself, and oh my gosh, that too made a big problem for me. But when I combined it with other chelators that are stronger, that wash out very quickly, that was magic for me.
So, okay, so we've talked a lot about science and toxicity and all these things, you know, and you're such an inspiring person in so many ways. And I know, like, in our old interview, we talked about prayer and your faith practice, but I just want to know, like, where are you at now with life and natural medicine, and you've had this whole career and you've moved forward in it, and it's a very broad question, but just like what, you know, like where are you at now? Like, what is your relationship now to natural medicine and health and like creativity?
Yeah, it's a big question for me.
Do you want to have some water? Think about it. Like, just relax. It's okay.
No. It's a huge question for me because for me, you have to understand. Thank you. When I was sick, you know, my wife literally, she didn't hear God, but she heard God in her heart, and it was clear as day. I remember the day. She said, "God not only is going to get you well, but He's going to take a message to the world through you." And when I was sick, I did not want to hear that at all, because I was like, my comment back to her was, "I can't even get myself well." It's like, so who am I helping? You know, but here we are, right? I would never be sitting here if that wasn't the case. And so, you know, my wife just has that intuition. She hears from God more so than I do, and that's one of her gifts. But everything I do, you know, stems from that, right? And I'll say these are words that mean more to me, you know, as I get older, right? It's like, you know, because what legacy are you leaving behind, right? And, you know, now my kids, we have 5 who really they all have their story of neurotoxins, right? Some of which got, you know, stuff from my wife and I, right? And 2 others we adopted, and they have, you know, they had issues differently. They had some vaccine damage, and so all 7 of us. My wife had high lead, by the way, so we all were affected by neurotoxins. But we all have our story. The point is that, you know, God is doing something through them now to bring the message to the world. That to me is even more important. So
I was gonna say, you know, a long time ago when you were ill, there was so much motivation to figure it out because you were sick, and I've experienced this myself. And then when you start to get better, but then you were saying your kids had these struggles, so you were working with them. So I guess it's continuing to keep you motivated, that you're surrounded by people that need you to.
Yeah. I mean, my kids are better now. You know, they all had their story. We adopted my son Dylan, and then Olivia. They were 7 at the time. They lost their parents tragically, and Dylan was on the autism spectrum. And if you met Dylan now, you would never know it, except he is shy. He is very, very, you know, shy, because those parts of the brain don't develop when you're taken out for a certain amount of years, and he was. I always like to say, even probably wasn't perfect, Dylan was my second patient. I was the first.
Wow.
You know, but Dylan, I did apply everything I learned on my own to Dylan, and he got his life back. And then Olivia, they were twins. It wasn't until she was a teenager that she started having major hormone issues, aches and pains, fibromyalgia type stuff.
Right.
You know, whereas he was sensory integration when he was younger, like just very sensory stimuli, chewing, loud noises would just send him through the roof. That became her later. Very typical that girls are not affected when they were younger, but typically affected later. And then, so she had to go through, I mean, what I teach is cellular detox, and there's a process that I teach. They both had to go through that. And they both had to revisit it. Well, Dylan is now revisiting it as he is now, you know, almost 25. He is revisiting certain things, and probably even emotionally, right? That's affecting him. But the bottom line is that my other 3 biological boys, my wife had very high lead that was affecting her hormones, and that lead went into my natural boys. So all 7 of us have our story.
So interesting, and we could go on each one differently. Olivia's in chiropractic school now, right? She's going to be a chiropractor.
She is.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, it is, and she's carrying the legacy there.
Yeah, because none of your sons decided. I'm surprised that none of your sons, but they're.
And then my son Daniel, I built an online program where we help coach people on all the things that I teach.
Right.
So I used to, you know, if I would take someone on for a year and coach them, we put it into a university online, and then he is running that business passionately. It's called Pompa program.
Yes.
And, you know, he's amazing. And
He
my
is
other son
amazing.
runs operations for it. My other son, all the kids work for the company.
That's awesome.
That was
I
the
didn't
legacy.
realize
That was the legacy
Okay.
that I told you. Yes, they all do. They're passionate about it because they lived it, right?
Yeah.
They lived it.
And I think like in the modern times, like the youth are figuring out that these old paths are not necessarily the only way. Like you don't have to go. I mean, it's good to be educated formally for sure,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of bureaucracy and problems around, and it makes it harder to really reach people and get the message out. And like they've learned how to utilize the internet.
Oh yeah, I mean, people watching this may have seen some of
Yeah.
you know, our ads about Pompa program,
Okay.
and
Wanna talk about it?
I'm proud about that whole program because it is a multi-therapeutic approach. You know, what I teach doctors is all in there, and but yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to promote anything. I want to educate people.
I want people to know how they can, like, because part of what you do is like you treat, you work counseling with patients, clients.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so you're helping
Clients.
people who have maybe like seen a lot of doctors, who maybe don't have a diagnosis of anything because people have looked and they can't find anything, but they're still struggling, and then they find your coaching. And what do you do? Like, how would that go?
I mean, I still take some people on individually. I'm passionate about it.
Okay.
You know, and I take the harder things.
Okay.
And again, it's coaching though, because you have to teach. My goal is never to treat anymore.
Okay.
My goal is to teach the person the process.
Okay.
Because then they'll do it long enough to actually matter, right? We know what a brain phase looks like, right? Where you're getting neurotoxins out of the deep nerve system. That's different for you, it's different for me, it's different for them. So therefore, we can't just hand someone, here's a detox protocol.
Right.
If it were only so easy.
Right.
Right? You and I are both very passionate about that. It's like, you know, the doses for you are very different than me. Even the chelator that would be great for you is necessarily not for me. There's so many different nuances that's kind of what I did in that Pompa program is I kind of explained, here's the core of what we know works.
Okay.
And I've
Which
taught
might
for
help
years.
a percentage of people, like
Absolutely.
a big chunk, but then there's
Right.
always going to be
but
outliers.
then there's all how to figure out what doses, your cycle lanes, how to do it, what you know works better for you, what downstream detox support is good. Very different for you than me. We all have different weaknesses. So that's what the program. I did a webinar. I think if you go to pompasolutions.com, you can actually see a webinar that I did about it. So
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to go watch it. I want to see it.
Yeah, and you know, I wanted to say one more thing because
Yeah.
you asked me about the spiritual end of
Yes.
this. I always think about the people watching this.
Okay, yeah.
Because that's my heart, right?
Yeah.
So there's a biblical saying, Rak Kazakamatz.
Okay.
In the English translation doesn't do it justice. It means be strong and courageous. So, but it's an ancient war cry in the Hebrew. And it means so much more when you break down the Hebrew words. It means that really God has a promise for you. And I think about sick people watching this. He does. He has a promise, I think, for all of us. You know, just like he has a purpose. We all have a purpose. But I think beyond purpose is a promise. And in people watching this, maybe it's a promise of healing or some other promise. But as we're about to move into the promise, we have so many fears. We have so many anxieties. We have so many doubts. And that's how the enemy keeps us from the promise. And that's why when God would send somebody in, and if you look at the Bible, every time you see big, strong, and courageous, that's Rak Kazakamatz. And he would send someone to speak those words. And that means that God has already moved into the promise for you. He's taken that promise. He's given it to you.
Okay.
And again, I believe it applies to all of us. And you know, but that gives people hope because it's not you. So when you think about what you have to do, as Israel was about to cross into their promise, you know, God spoke through Moses on his deathbed, Rak Kazakamatz Israel, and that was actually spoken to Joshua because he was going, I can't lead these people into this. I'm overwhelmed. And then here they are crossing the Jordan and going into their promise that how many years, 40 years wandering. I mean, here they are, right? And they're going, all they saw was 31 armies. People wanted them dead, right? And they were backing up. And then God spoke through Joshua, Rak Kazakamatz Israel. I've got it. I've moved before you. And so that's what I want them to hear.
So what I'm hearing is like faith and don't give up and keep pushing forward.
Yeah, look, I think it's no matter what, is, you know, to say, hey, it's not just you. That's scary when you think it's just you. You know, if you think, and again, I'm not promoting, I believe what I believe, right? But I think we all can say, okay, it's something bigger than me.
It's also, though, like, and I can relate, it's a sick brain that you're trying to utilize to motivate you through that. It's really hard, right? I mean,
so hard.
So, you know,
So
there's got to be different things that get people going, different time. I mean, me, like, sometimes one thing will work one day and it won't work the next day, and I have to find something else. And I don't know where that grit comes from, or like ability to push through. Certainly, some people can't, and they need help, right? They need the community.
Well, it's mind, body, spirit. It really is, and you know, of course, that means different things to different people, right?
Yeah.
But it's still mind, body, spirit.
So I think for me, like, meditating and prayer really helped, because I didn't need to use the parts of my brain that were. So if I was just really not having it, I couldn't function. I could at least breathe, like focus on the breath, try to like praying. And then, like, you know, people come, like I met you and you taught me about amalgam illness, and if you hadn't, I don't know I would have just kept spinning my wheels, and I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's the point, isn't it? That God is before you, right? It's like, and He is working it out. You know, we absolutely have to submit, you know, to that and go, okay, thank God there's something beyond me. So I think it's free.
That's a good Mercury retrograde lesson too, since it's supposed to be a time when you just slow down and you just, thank you, Vanessa. She said, God bless you. I know it says Stacy, but she's on her sister's account. That's my sister. So
Oh, wow.
she also has Mercury toxicity. And I wanted to address Gabrielle's comment. I don't know if Gabrielle's still watching, but she asked earlier, she said something like, she has sleep problems. I can't remember the specifics of the question, but she was asking, like, what are some other causes of sleep problems? I know it's really general, but if you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, I mean, sleep is one of those things that is like, gosh, most neurotoxic people face it at one point, right? It's, you know, there's the feeling of like, oh, you want to do is sleep, or even if you do sleep 8 hours, you wake up and wiped out.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden you're waking up in the middle of the night, you can't get back to sleep, but then you can't get to sleep, right?
Yeah.
We've been through it all.
Right.
Look, I mean, there's so many reasons for that, right? That where even your blood glucose can drop in the middle of the night, and to save your own brain's life, it raises up cortisol to raise up glucose, because glucose follows cortisol, and you wake up and you're like ready to go, but yet you're wiped out in the day.
Wait, say that again. Glucose follows cortisol in the morning. So what's your glucose doing in the morning?
Well, so that can happen at 3 in the morning for people.
Oh,
so
right. Like you're releasing glycogen stores?
So what happens is when people are very toxic, right? Your cells make energy in the mitochondria.
Okay.
So I don't want to talk too deep, but your cells use two things for energy: sugar, okay, or carbohydrates, right? So think of sugar as carbohydrates, right? Or it can use fat, all right? So that's it, sugar or fat, all right? That's what your cells can use for energy, okay? And of course, it needs oxygen, but that's across the board. But many people, because of toxins, are stuck as sugar burners.
You just brought up a really good point. If she's not breathing correctly in sleep and not getting oxygen, that could be a factor. Okay.
Yeah, but right. I mean, if you took all her oxygen away, she would die.
You can come over this way, Marilee.
In typically 3 or 4 minutes.
You're on camera, probably.
Yeah. Hello, that's my wife back there.
And dogs.
Yeah, and dogs. But anyways, so yes, and if you have a lack of oxygen, that affects energy, to your point. Okay, but sugar and fat, hormonally, healthy hormonally person, to say a new word, has the ability to go back and forth from sugar to fat, right? So if you have sugar, you can burn it, use it. But when you don't, your body, like say at 3 in the morning, you're not eating sugar or have it for many hours, your body will burn fat. And it keeps your brain functioning, because when you burn fat, it makes something called ketones. Your brain uses those for energy. All is well, sleep through the night, wake up, normal glucose levels, energy, great. But if you're stuck as a sugar burner with the hormonal inability to utilize fat for energy, now in the middle of the night, your body's going, we can't burn fat, so we're going to either burn muscle, which is no good, because that lowers your metabolism, or it goes, you know what, we don't want to burn muscle because we're doing too much of that, and fight or flight and survival is our thing. So we're going to raise up cortisol to make your body release glucose and from its liver where it's stored it. And you release cortisol, and it makes you wake up in the middle of the night. So that could be a malfunctioning mitochondria due to neurotoxins that why you wake up in the middle of the night.
Wow, interesting. Oh, that's a good explanation of why toxicity can affect sleep.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh,
So people go, okay, my doctor told me I have elevated cortisol. Great, okay, you can do things like, there's a product called Serifos that you could probably find it on Amazon, Seripos, that is amazing if you wake up in the middle of the night and you take this Serifos and it downregulates cortisol. However, what's upstream from that more? Meaning, what's causing this problem?
Is it
People
the
don't
amygdala
question
again?
that.
Is it that amygdala?
It could be. That's the point, right? It could be physical, chemical, or emotional toxins, stressors driving the cortisol, right? So one of the things I always teach, even when I train doctors, is, okay, great, we can do things to mitigate thyroid issues, cortisol issues, adrenal issues, but what's causing the problem?
Right.
And rarely do people go far enough up the river, up the stream,
Right.
to actually get to a lasting solution.
Right. And these things layer so much over chronicity, like
That's right.
dealing with dysbiosis when it wasn't the original problem, but then it becomes a problem because of all the reasons. I don't want to go there, but just
well,
just say,
it brings back that microbiome
Yeah, the
issue, right?
microbiome.
So people were saying, okay, well, you have to fix the gut.
Yeah.
And I go, all right, well, if only that were so simple, right?
Well, also good luck. It doesn't work when you're really toxic. So anyone who's
That's
done
the
a
point.
gut cleanse, yeah.
That's the point.
And that was for me when I started learning functional medicine, and every functional medicine course I went to was like, heal the gut first, start with the gut. And I, you know, by the grace of God, like it didn't work for me. So I already knew that there was some fallacy happening.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was interesting.
You know, I was thinking we should actually, Marilee was back there. We should have come and tell her story. She'd be a nice guest.
Do we have time to bring Marilee on? Well, we'd have to mic her. She can
give her a handheld.
She can share Dr. Pompa's
She can
mic.
speak into mine. But, you know, my wife has a pretty unique story because her mom ended up with breast cancer.
Okay.
And it was no doubt driven from a toxic source. Her mother had a lot of lead, growing up in the lead generation, right? And she dealt with that in a way that she was considered a survival. So if you look at the treatments that she did, she was a survivor, breast cancer survivor, because she lived over 5 years.
Okay.
And here it was, I said to her mom, whose name was Joyce, look, you have to go upstream to the cause. If you don't go upstream to the cause, you're going to end up with another hormone-driven cancer. And it was 10 years almost exactly, typical. 10 years later, something else bruised. And she ended up with uterine cancer, and then she ended up dying 2 years later. But I tell my wife's story because hormonally, my wife was heading down the same direction. And we did a 24-hour urine hormone, which is actually, by the way, the really good test to do. You collect your urine for 24 hours, and it gives a very accurate picture of your hormones. There's one that you can find probably on Amazon called the Dutch test.
Yeah.
And it's perfect because it really gives you a glimpse of there's something called estrogen metabolites. They are toxic if you don't get rid of them. They're literally estrogen toxins, if you will. And my wife's were building up just like her mother's. We didn't know. Like, we wouldn't have known. And so we did things to help it. We were doing, improved her methylation.
Okay.
We did, things that natural health practitioners would do. And yes, it helped, but it wasn't permanent. Something else was going wrong. It was her lead upstream. It was dysregulating her hormones.
Right, and the methylation process,
exactly.
all of it.
So one of the ways you get rid of toxic estrogen, as an example, called 4-hydroxyestrone, is a methyl group comes in and attaches to it. Then it creates something called 4-methyl-hydroxyestrone, and then it's able to be escorted out of the body. Okay, great when that works. Well, my wife's lead levels were tanking her methylation.
Wow.
So we were trying to give her, all the methylators, and it wasn't working. Her test kept coming back the same until we dealt with the stressor, which was the lead.
And I feel like I'm doing like a talk show now. Let's bring out
okay,
Marilee and see if the baby is yours.
Wife.
No, just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. My wife is 53 years old. I'm going to embarrass her before she gets here.
Let's bring her
and
out.
she is just...
Not yet?
Not yet,
wait.
not yet.
Well, and wait. Oh. And I was laughing, you know why I was laughing when you started talking about that was because of calcium D-glucarate, which is like our favorite little, like you think is like my thing, but that's what helps prevent the unwrapping of bad estrogen in the gut, right? From beta-glucuronidase. That's why I love that product.
And that's a pathway, right?
It's
I mean, that's an important pathway.
But it doesn't address the root, like you're 100% correct.
Yeah. And again, it's not that we're...
Guys, sorry,
go ahead.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you because you're saying something brilliant. But we're going to take like a 2-minute break to set up Marilee and get her here so she can talk about her lead experience and some other things.
And her wisdom.
And her wisdom. And you'll see how beautiful she is. I'm excited. Okay. Welcome back to Sway TV. I'm Dr. Kate. I'm here with a phenomenal guest. We've had the best conversation. You can check out, if you missed, in the replay, swayreplay.com. And we are here now joined by Dr. Pompa's amazing wife, Marilee Pompa. And we were, right before the break, we were about to get into how the heavy metal lead had a really big impact on her entire life, on her mother's life, and how she got through that.
Yeah, I kind of told that's at least the scientific part of this story,
Yeah.
why lead was depleting her methylation, and if you don't have enough of this thing called methylation, you build up toxic estrogens. And that's what happened to her mom, right? And they, of course, treated her breast cancer, then it ended up uterine cancer. And I always say my wife was heading down the same road, but didn't, thank God. God has a purpose for her.
So, first of all, Marilee, is this your first time on Amazon?
On Amazon?
Live?
Yes, actually it is.
It is.
First time for everything.
Well, that's good. That's what we like. We're really grateful that you guys are both here. And so I know like about both of you and your backgrounds. You guys are sort of these cool like biohackers who go all around trying. And I know you love to try everything that like, and people contact Dr. Pompa to be like, hey, will you try my product and tell me and tell your, you know, he has so many followers. So you're like right there with him being like, let me try, right?
Oh yeah, pick me. You know, yeah, he can't do something without me because he usually doesn't want to try anything unless he's researched it and knows that it's worth trying.
But my point being is that you have this passion for trying these things. Where does that come from? Can you talk about that?
Oh my gosh, yes,
Oh, I can't wait to hear this answer because I want to hear if she really answers it truthfully. Then I'll give you mine. God, what's the answer? Why do you have the passion for trying all these things?
Well, I think I've been conditioned, but I also don't want to miss out.
Fair.
And I always say I am your #1 guinea pig.
Okay,
But
fair.
why? But why?
And why? Because I said it because you research things that you find value in. And I've always said that I value so much that from the time I've met you and you've developed your principle, you've kept your core philosophy as your basic premise. And so everything that we do, we have,
from that.
yeah, it comes from, nothing's changed. You add to it as God directs you.
And that is absolutely true, everything she said, truthful. Now, I talked a little bit earlier, and she probably didn't hear.
I didn't.
But, you know, we all have those fears in our limbic system, right? So just having told her mother's story, you know, no doubt there is something in her that fears that and says, I'm not going to end up that way. And by the way, it's driving her in a good way, so I'm not saying it's a negative. But again, it's a pathway of going, I'm not going to end up like my mom. So, you know, she's willing to try things that most people be like, I'm afraid of that, or I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to be disciplined enough to do that. It drives her because she's not going to be her mom.
And so I would say, and you can tell me if you agree with this or not, I, as a person, I've spent, I mean, like probably if you totaled all the time I've spent doing modalities since I got sick, I mean, it would be like months, right, of just modalities. And I've had like arguments with close family, people who are like, are you sure this isn't in your head? And I'm like, look, I would not spend an entire day. I would not drive 8 hours or 5 hours to some clinic to find some new thing to try something and then lay like. And when you're really healthy and you feel really good, laying on a PEMF mat for an hour, it gets boring. You'd rather go do something else. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering if there's a relationship there between just like what you went through with your metals and other things to like feeling better, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and as you know, I'm 53, so it's really important to me to age and have my health. And I've watched him suffer, and I lived through that with him, and we went through hard things just as a result of that too. And so I really have enough, I feel like, that I've had to overcome just through you and then my own challenges and knowing my mom's history. And of course, I'm determined to do it God's way. I don't want to do things that aren't in my best interest for my health long term, not just quick, temporary, feel better things. And as a result of that, you really have to put time and energy into finding the legitimate things that work, staying the course, because nothing worth having is going to happen in a few moments. It might take a lot of different therapies and a lot of committed effort, and that's how we live. We really do live that way.
You do. I've seen it. I've
You've
been to
been
your
to
house.
ours.
What are your favorite things to do for health?
Oh my gosh. Well, of course I value how
Feast
we eat.
days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't tell you about
Yeah.
diet variation, right? I was supposed to do that.
let's talk about that.
Yeah,
Or-
but feast days. So like people always go, gosh, the Pompa's gone. They were eating at that amazing Italian restaurant. Heritage is Italian, and so I value that. But when you watch me eat at home, or us, you know, we're very, and we eat spot on. But you know, even when we travel, right, we find the healthy restaurants.
Yeah, we
but
don't-
I eat higher healthy carbs,
Yeah.
and I vary my diet. There's a whole principle around it.
Yeah, we definitely don't compromise a few of the things that are very important, as in oils.
Yeah, talk to them
That's-
about that though, because that's a huge thing that everyone can do right now, and that's
Oh,
a
by the way,
massive change.
Talk
I
about the
drive
oils.
all my friends that have come to dinner with us and continue to come to dinner with us. They usually have adopted my language in that, but I was like the one that really drove everyone crazy, because where I won't sacrifice is I will not eat food that's been prepared with canola oil and or vegetable oil. So basically that starts a conversation right from the start when we sit down at a table, or before we even make a reservation.
Yeah.
But then we have to go through it usually a few times, and it can be a little bit much, but at the end of the day, everyone's very thankful that, you know, they get that lesson on what the oils do to you if they are not good oils. So we really don't ever compromise there. So if a restaurant can prepare our food with, you know, a better oil than a canola oil or a vegetable oil.
And typically they can use pure olive oil, but
Or butter,
okay,
or
by the way,
ghee.
this is a true story, right? We were out in supposedly an amazing Italian restaurant, right? First question we asked was, you know, do you use pure olive oil? Can we get everything done in pure olive oil? And they came back from the kitchen and said, no, we use a cut of olive oil, and I don't know if it was vegetable or canola oil, but we left.
It was
Because
canola.
because that to me judges the quality of the restaurant.
Yeah.
We went to another Italian restaurant, old school, and pure olive oil. We only use pure olive oil. Like, of
Right.
course, they were, you know, they almost get insulted, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, you know, that's the point. And let me explain why this is such a big deal.
Yes, please.
You know, so you could go and make an exception and eat a dessert, and your body burns that sugar down. But the problem with these fats is they make their way into your cell membranes, and there's a whole reason why that's really important, but they stay for months, not days, not hours, months. And they cause cellular dysfunction, which causes hormone dysfunction, which causes energy depletion, which causes, I mean, I could go on and on.
Cellulite, would you say?
All of it. Weight loss resistance.
Right.
Right? It's like, so all of that, so people don't understand how huge it is. So if we go out to eat, you know, though we don't make it that exception. And we know now, we travel so much, the restaurants that, you know, absolutely don't compromise, you know.
And they actually, the Italian restaurants also use the pasta that is imported. So they are.
That's another big
the
deal.
grain is, we just don't worry. So we may have, out of 5 or 6 dinners out, we may have 3 or 4 of those as Italian, and we relish it. We're excited about it, and we do find the good ones, or they've been recommended
So,
to us.
well, let me talk about the grain. What you meant there is that the grain from Italy, people, our friends who are gluten sensitive, they don't react to it. It's they don't spray it with glyphosate. It's not as old. It's more of an ancient wheat.
It's not hybridized like some of these.
Exactly.
Right.
Some of these, the ones that that we're using here in the U.S. are very hybridized, very sprayed with glyphosate, which causes leaky gut, which causes people to react. So if we're going to eat pasta, we're going to eat a real Italian grain-made pasta that they make homemade. So.
And so, yeah, amazing. And I think we had talked about glyphosate being a chelator too, right? It was glyphosate or BPA?
Well, no, glyphosate is a chemical that they're basically spraying on most of our food supply, and it is a chelator in that it pulls minerals. It's one of the reasons why it works as an herbicide.
And heavy metals from water pipes, right?
Yes.
Which can then deliver, because it can deliver the metals to the brain, I was reading. Like it can cross the blood-brain barrier. So that's just another, if you're thinking about gut, brain, and leaky gut.
And it opens up the gut and the brain barrier. So there was a study, Stephanie sent of 2012. She was the first to do the study, but it was showing that glyphosate opens up these barriers and allows the toxins like mercury that we're already exposed to cross deeper into the brain. And she believes it's leading to a lot of the autism that we're seeing. She believes it's leading to dementia and Alzheimer's, yes.
Yeah, totally, I could see that. So the big takeaways here are like, people might be eating these oils every day, and it could be a major source of fatigue and mitochondrial dysfunction. And
I won't say names, but even if they're going to certain health food stores, you still have to be careful because
We cannot say that name because of
I'm
this
not.
brand.
Oh yeah,
But I know
I'm-
exactly
yeah,
what
no.
you're thinking.
But you know, because I mean, again, people go to certain places and they think, okay, I'm in a healthy place, so you know they won't have canola or vegetable oil, but they do, and you
And
have
they
to be
always
careful.
list too in all health food stores, and if you're getting like something out of their, what's that called? The prepared food case where you can serve yourself. They always have the ingredients, so it really
them.
is important. Read the ingredients, and really, there's always options with foods that have about 5 listed ingredients, and usually those are the ones that are safe. And,
Yeah.
and that's
And
just
by the
true
way,
across
I'm not
the
even
board.
picking on one health food store because I've been in every health food store, and you still have to read ingredients.
Yeah.
Right,
So
of course.
you know, yeah. So that's across the board. Read ingredients.
So why do you think that type of oil, canola oil, is like legal and allowed, and why is it so bad? Can you explain like the molecular? Because people read
Well-
it and they think it's natural. It comes from a seed, right?
Yeah. Well, there's omega-6 is I believe the king of the cell membrane. A lot of attention is given to omega-3, but omega-6, as far as repairing membranes, the function of the membranes, actually matters more. It's very fragile, so in the processing of it, it gets adulterated, they call it, meaning rancified, or it's not healthy anymore. It becomes inflammatory causing. So, point is you take in these vegetable oils high in omega-6. The omega-6 goes to the cell membrane where it should, but it's adulterated. So therefore, it creates dysfunction for months in the membrane.
So your membrane is trying to make something out of basically a contaminated
Right.
raw material.
It's
and
like
then your
using bad
cell-
bricks.
Yeah, and then your cell sort of is like, and then what is why is the membrane important?
Well, all of your hormone receptors reside on your membrane, right? So when people think of hormone problems, we don't think of cells, right? We think of we have too little of a hormone.
Okay.
But rarely is it too little of a hormone. It's the cell sensitivity to the hormone, meaning how well do your cells hear your hormones. Very healthy people don't necessarily have high hormones. They could even have lower hormones, but their cells hear them. So hormone resistance means that your cells are inflamed and the receptors, the antennas, it's like you have a cell phone. What good is the cell phone if you don't have a tower?
Right.
What good is the hormone if you don't have a receptor?
Right.
So, when these cells become inflamed, which these bad oils inflame cells, so do toxins, right?
Okay.
And then you can't hear your hormones. That's one example. Also, when these fats make the cell more rigid, and it disrupts what we call cellular fluidity, you can't get good things in. So it doesn't matter how good you eat or vitamins you take, and you can't get toxins out. So now you end up with cellular toxicity.
Wow, and that causes more cell death,
Yeah.
right? And then you have, we didn't even talk about minerals like in the membrane, but that's another thing. Like your
Yeah.
daily functions, just trying to move and breathe and
Yep.
sweat and whatever, right?
Yeah,
And that
absolutely.
needs supplemented in many cases today because of the depletion of the soil.
Yeah,
so it is
it's true.
important to focus on
Iodine.
that. Don't neglect your minerals. And yes, especially for women in this stage of
She
life.
experienced it.
Iodine's a huge
So
component.
I agree. I love iodine. Well, some of them. So
Right.
so we have about 10 minutes left, and I think what would be really great is we started talking about your lead journey and your mom's journey with cancer and then lead. Do you guys want to kind of tell that story a little bit? I know you started to tell it, but
Well, I didn't tell the emotional component to it. Maybe I kind of hit the science.
Well, I
peaks,
think
but-
I think the most unfortunate part of it is that there are things that my mom was exposed to because she grew up in a generation in a old farmhouse with lead pipes, and unbeknownst to her, as is the case for many, you don't realize how much those exposures bioaccumulate over the years, and then when you start finding these disruptions, people aren't necessarily inclined to do the work and say there is a process that I need to undertake, and not any process will do. First of all, there's a lot of unsafe and ill-equipped detox processes that will just either stimulate things, not contain them properly and get them out of the body safely, and that can cause other problems. It's also not looking at all the upstream stressors. So sometimes the straw that breaks the camel's back is the trigger to look at all the other things that even predispose that necessarily that you were aware of. So I would say for just on a, on a personal level, and this isn't about me, it's about you. So yeah, it was awful. And what my mom went through and wouldn't accept, I think, was the most painful part of that for me, because we knew there was something that she needed to do that she wasn't willing to do. And so from that perspective, honestly, as my mom was dying, it was, if you could say the word beautiful, it was beautiful. So there is really no regret, because God redeemed and transformed her in such a horrific time of life. So for that, I'm grateful, and that's what I anchor myself to, because quite honestly, there were a lot of experiences that she had in her mothering that I know that she could have had such a more rich and fulfilling life had she looked at certain things that she wasn't willing to accept. And so for that, I encourage people to really figure it out, find legitimate resources that you can trust, that understand the journey, that have suffered for the purpose of teaching
different counseling.
And absolutely. And for me, the last 8 years, through other circumstances in my own life, led me to really dig into that too.
Let me bring life to that, though, because she doesn't know what we discussed earlier.
Yeah,
we
don't.
yeah, no, that's fine.
You're doing great.
No,
though.
but
She's
no,
jumping right in.
because that's awesome, because it pulls
Yes.
together what we were saying before,
Yes.
right? All of us on this couch, we had to go through our physical part of, emptying that bucket of dealing with that Mercury, lead combinations. Mercury.
Mostly.
Mercury mostly.
So.
But the point is, though, is that Marilee, her father left her when she was young, right? I mean, abandonment issues, right? So
The amygdala started getting primed.
absolutely, right?
Yeah.
And her mom, because of her toxic issues, created certain stressors in Marilee's life. So the point is that she emptied.
all the moms,
exactly.
that generation.
She emptied the lead, the stress bucket, but
Okay.
then Marilee had to go through the emotional healing, as we all did, right? And that was the point I was making earlier, and that's what you were alluding to, right? It's like I got rid of this, and then I had to dump this.
It's like an onion.
So,
You literally, when you become conscious, you start peeling the layers of yourself away. And what you learn in that is that, wow, if you choose it, is that not only do you heal, but you take the responsibility off of others, that they're not going to change anyway. And truly what happens in the process of that also is that you realize that your story is your testimony, and you have something then to offer others of value. And there is really the greatest fulfillment, I think, is the encouragement and the hope that you can bring into other people's lives.
Barak Hazakamats.
That was
I
really
told them
beautiful.
last
Yeah, we
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Wow. Well, I feel like we could talk all day about so many things, like the layers, and people are all in different places. So where can they, if they want to learn more about your work? You have a bunch of books and.
Yeah, the Cellular Healing Diet is the one on Amazon. This one you would go to, it's not out yet, so you can get it, but it's beyondfastingbook.com if you want to pre-order it.
And this will be available on Amazon soon, right?
Yes.
Soon, okay.
Yep.
And we'll plug it again then.
Yeah, and that really discusses, again, part of her hormonal story, right? Was she ended up with some bad cells, one step from cancer, and she fasted for how many days?
10.
10 days.
Wow.
And so they said, well, you'll be back because you need this done, right?
Yeah.
And she wasn't back, right? It fixed itself because the body heals itself, and fasting can be that magic.
So, and we would say this was a 10-day fast, under the supervision of a doctor, basically, right? I mean, that can sometimes.
Well, right. I talk about that in the book. Typically, we would, 5-day fast is magic, right? And basically what you would do up to that fast. And there's different types of fasts that are.
And different people have different health challenges. So, by all means, for someone that's healthy, fasting is not of concern. But for someone that's not, there's definitely an added level of guidance and counsel that they need.
For sure. I mean, there's things can happen during that 10 days, but
Absolutely.
that's amazing. 10 days. I want to do it. I've never done a 10-day fast. I've done 5. That's the most I ever did. My mom did a 21-day fast, I think, in the 7 days. She always talks about it. It's
Our son did 11. Our son did 11 days, and he was our youngest of 5, and he was the one that just kind of went off the deep end.
Wow.
And just did what he wanted, ate when he wanted. Anyways, he was developing this psoriasis. and he was also overweight.
Oh.
And he saw a picture of a woman that I helped with full-blown psoriasis. It was before and after. 12 maybe, I don't know, 13, whatever, yeah, 12 or 13. But anyways, and he said, whoa, what is that? And I explained, I'm like, that's kind of what you have going on. He's like, okay. And, well, what did she do? I said, well, she did my detox, of course, but she also fasted. And anyway, so he walked out of the room, came back, and said, I'm fasting, Dad. Okay, sure you are. Anyways, he did. It kept going.
I think like the next day.
Yeah.
And we talked to him a few days later, and he was still fasting.
Yeah,
so it was unprovoked
but
completely.
it fixed him. I tell the story in my book, actually.
Wow, that's amazing.
All gone.
You know, it's so funny how I just thought about like in high school I was a wrestler, and like there was a big season where I wasn't allowed to eat because I was cutting, and I didn't know. But having mercury my whole life, not knowing, I bet that really helped, even though it was hard.
Yeah.
I bet it really helps.
It does. Well, you know, what happens during fasting? Gosh, here we go. I promise you I'm not going to go.
But
We're trying to end the show. You're trying to end the show.
Well, we have 3 minutes,
all right,
actually.
in 3 minutes. So he did. He lost his weight and he lost his cravings. And it fixed him.
Yeah,
he's thin and, tall and lanky. But anyways, what happens in fasting is something called autophagy. The body will not eat good cells to get its energy. It's too smart for that. It uses bad cells for its energy, and that's called autophagy. So it gets rid of bad functioning cells. So remember I said the cells that have mitochondria that won't use fat, it'll get rid of those cells. But here's the best part. It will tell a stem cell to replace it. So it creates a stem cell or tells a stem cell to replace this particular cell that it used for energy. So you become a new you. With each fast, you're getting rid of bad cells in creating new cells. That's some of the magic.
That's amazing. And now I have a question. Okay, if I have a lot of toxicity stored in fat, so this might be like a myth I've heard or wherever it's stored, and then I'm fasting, am I going to mobilize toxins and feel bad?
You can, and I talk about that because what I did the one I said is, if you watch the first segment here, the prophetic one, she developed a page called Fasting for a Purpose. That you don't just fast for physical reasons, although it's the oldest therapy known to man. You fast when you want to move the hand of God, or you want to, move something that feels impossible to move. Our son was in a bad way, we'll just say that. And he's not anymore because of fasting for a purpose. So we fasted for him. And that's where that fasting for a purpose. But on that page, we fast, there's almost 40,000 people, I think over 40,000 people. But I learned a lot, even though I started studying fasting in the 90s. There's something called the fasting trio that mitigates that toxin release, because people do get that toxin release, and that's why they feel bad when they fast. So I talk about that in the book.
Okay, so the triad.
Yeah, the fasting trio.
Stops the toxins from hurting you? Or?
Yeah, from redistributing and creating more problems.
I mean, I can see why, like, if the liver has more availability because you're not eating, so it doesn't have to do any of those things, then it can maybe handle the toxins that get mobilized, right?
You do handle toxins at a much higher level. Because that's the body's designed to fast. It really is. And therefore, it deals with those toxins.
I love it. Oh, I want to talk more about fasting. You're going to have to come back next time you're in LA. Thank you so much.
Every time we come.
Guys. I'm so grateful for everyone for watching today. Please check out Dr. Pompa on Instagram, just Dr. Pompa, and on your website, and check out his book on Amazon. And thank you so much, Marilee, too.
You're welcome.
And yeah, for getting him here. Like, I know that you were a big part of that. Or like the reason. And yeah, I'm Dr. Kate. This has been another great episode with Sway TV. We're really grateful for Sway and Amazon Live. Thank you guys. Be sure to check out the replay on swayreplay.com. And don't forget to sway. Let's sway. You guys want to try it with me? Let's sway.
I don't know. Just sway like this?
Let's sway. Yeah.
Follow Sway TV. Follow Sway right here. Ooh, it's this way, sorry. Corey says, thank you, Sway TV. Shakira says, thank you, Sway. Yes, guys, it is so much fun. We love Sway TV.
Talk to all your friends and your family. Let them know about Sway TV.
Enjoy the rest of your day and have a Tambay party.
Thank you, Sway TV.
Amazon Live! Woo!
had such a great time with all of you.
Shop-attainment all the time. We in the house, we having fun, we doing the thing, we swaying. So much fun hanging out with me on Sway TV, on Amazon Live.
See you guys tomorrow. Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway. Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's sway.
Let's go, let's sway.